Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Joined today with Draft Professors Newt Weston and Owen, and we were shooting the bull too long backstage. That's why we get started like 3 minutes late. But we're going to be doing some edge and defensive tackle big boards. But before we do that, Newt, do you have any message for the audience as a precursor to seeing everybody's boards?
If you're looking for a fight in the octagon tonight, I don't think you're gonna get it. This has been probably the most peaceful meeting of the minds possible, and I absolutely hate it. I'm looking for World War II out here. We're getting the Treaty of Versailles.
God, that's such a history teacher comment to make about that.
I'm not even a history teacher. I'm a physics teacher.
But
same
the
difference.
Treaty of Versailles is what caused World War II. So I wouldn't really call that.
Yeah, but that's like, so it's foreshadowing what's to come.
Oh,
when we do linebackers and safeties in the future.
Now, when we get to talk about offensive tackle and I get to go at Owen for having my boy Caleb Tiernan too low.
I would say I'm surprised that we came out as similar as we did. I know I did a couple of my grades changed from when we first talked about them over on our weekly episodes, but I didn't think I was that far off from what I was saying. And I'm surprised, especially, I think they're going to be a handful. I think between what I saw, we'll have some conversation points, obviously, but we definitely are going to have some, a lot of stuff, a lot more in common than we did last year.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree.
Yeah, and maybe it's because this class is maybe more bland, right? We don't have the Abdul Carters up at the top. But
I think that with last year, that made it a little bit more exciting. Like, you had clear-cut Abdul Carter, but then, like, who was edge two? Like, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart. I had Nick Skirton as my edge two. There were a lot of ways to go at following Abdul Carter.
Who the hell was my edge two? I can't even remember.
Exactly. I mean,
I had Jalen Walker and Michael Williams.
Yeah, I mean, so like it was a beefy class up top.
So I see some similarities. This is the third podcast where Draft Professors has done an edge board, right? So we had Chris and Dalton do it on Monday. We had Jack Brenton, Brian Maffey, Drew Collings do it on Sunday. Now we have Newton Owen doing it on Wednesday. So you guys have watched upwards of 64 to maybe even 80 defensive tackle and edge prospects. I'm going to read Newt's board on the left in order just so that the users on Spotify can know the players we're talking about. Ruben Bain, TJ Parker, Keldrick Falk, David Bailey, Cassius Howell, Akeem Mesidor, Zion Young, Malachi Lawrence, Derek Moore, Max Llewellyn, Will Helt, Romello Height, R. Mason Thomas, Gabe Akis, LT Overton. And then when I look at Owen's board, the only edge that I see that's different is actually Santana Hopper is on Owen's edge board. But I think
I don't have Zion Young at all in my top 15.
Right. So that's the one player that's different.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the point, is that the top 15s are the top 15s with one exception.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Santana Hopper a little bit later for me too.
Right.
Obviously, we'll talk about him now, but
no, go for it, Newt. So,
well, I was just gonna say I've got him with my DTs.
I was gonna say, to make a clarification, if he was in DT like yours was, my number 15th player would be Zion Young.
Okay. Yeah. And once again, it just kind of like wraps up the similarities between the Bournes that we were talking about. And I think some of the things come back to the point where, in the Draft Professor chat, it was popping off. Was that today or yesterday with like Ruben Bain, and the arm length and the conversations that Brugler had made about him going to defensive tackle. I think with specifically Santana Hopper, I'm going to have that conversation with like myself in terms of, all right, where's the arm length at? Is it adequate for him to go outside, or does he have like those shorter arms that keep him in? And that's going to be kind of maybe a great evaluation once those measurements come in. Right now, I have him with defensive tackles.
And I believe his pressure. So the one of the pieces of data that I really liked is somebody pointed out Ruben Bain's, I believe, pressure rate when he's rushing from like a 5, 7, or 9 technique position is like 21%. And when he's between 0 and 4i, it's only like 15%. So he wins on the outside more, which would imply that he should be an edge. But like, I don't hear anybody talking about Ruben Bain being a Myles Garrett impact edge. People are saying he's the best edge in the class, but we're not talking about a player that's going to take over a game. Owen, do you have reason to either agree or disagree with me?
I mean, watching the film, like I agree with your pressure and like the advanced stats show like he's a great edge. And watching the film, I do think he is a guy that I think he could be number one pass rusher on the edge for a team. I think he's the only guy in this entire class I can confidently say that in. And if he does come in with 31-inch or even sub 31-inch arms, it is going to be tricky because that's a lot of what comes down to with players. Like, it's the same conversation we have with offensive tackles, why you would rather not have guys play outside, because it's a whole space game, and having length allows you to eliminate space and get hands on quicker, and it makes it just a lot easier. But just watching the tape, I can't see where Ruben Bain falls for me, or even like I would want to try him an edge just because he has the tape of a guy that plays an edge. If you told me he had 33-inch arms as opposed to like 30 and a half, I'd believe you, because he just plays with as much length. He plays well in that space, and he can reduce down inside. It gets easier for more hands to get on at that point when it comes to doubles and stuff like that, whereas he gets put out in those wider alignments. Now he's able to one-on-one go against these tackles, and he's stronger than them, has a lot of quick twitch to get into their chest. So while he doesn't have the great length, he's not going to be this elite player. I do think he has enough talent to be a number one pass rusher eventually, or if not, a high overqualified number 2.
Nice. No, I like that. Just to kind of like touch off that. For starters, to answer the comment, I haven't gotten eyes on Vincent Anthony Jr. Out of Duke. We looked at Wesley Williams a little bit, but I didn't look. I'm assuming that on the other side. So can't comment on that, unfortunately. Didn't make the 80 guys that we had talked about. But with Bain, going back to kind of stepping off Owen's comment, I think he hit the nail on the head. I think that there's so many elements of his game that allow him to win out wide, and he plays really well with speed to power. He's able to use a versatile bag of tricks, and he's able to win as a true outside pass rusher. And if that's where his bread and butter is, and that's where, he has shown those flashes, I want to keep him there. When you take a look at the guy, he's got the ability to play in a lot of different alignments, and he's shown that he can, play pretty much any position from 3 to wide 9. Now, where his comfort spot's going to be is when you start looking at that 5 or 7 tech, maybe a 4i. But I think that really he's got the opportunity to continue to do that and continue to win. The way that he's been able to do this at the collegiate level is, setting the stage for what he can do at the NFL level, because he's playing and doing this against top tier talent, and he's doing it at a really high rate. You don't put up a 33% true pass win rate without having, that ability to kind of go back to it. And there's going to be conversations and questions on arm length. He's going to be this year's Will Campbell, where we can just not stop talking about this all the way to the very end. And, where does that put him? But I truly think that, what he's put out on film is going to set the stage for what he is going to grade out as. And with that being said, while he might get dinged a little bit for that arm length, I still think that he's shown that he's a really good pass rusher from an edge.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you pick him inside, I don't really see how that benefits anything about his game where playing on the edge, he doesn't already look as good as he is. Like, if anything, you're just going to make him a more negative all-around player because you have some fear about arm length. Like, if it becomes an issue, then, yeah, you can start moving into that, but I feel like you can just bank on the tape right away and then figure it out after that.
Yeah, and there are going to be some teams that like from the lens of the Green Bay Packers, they would never touch him if he's got like the sub 31-inch arms. It's just like the fact of how the Packers draft. Now they don't have to worry about that because they're not drafting until the second half of the second round. But with that, you're going to see some teams that are willing to follow the grade or the tape, and then other teams that are just like, nope, not for us.
Like, just for an example, one of my grading elements I have for edge rushers is a category called labeled as length, where I do think once his official measurements come in, it'll get knocked down a bit if it is that short. But like a lot of that is based off of just like, how does he play? Does he play long? Does he play with the ability to use his arm length? Like, it's like, even look at like last year with Caleb Tiernan, another guy that has shorter arm length. He didn't play last year like he was like this T-Rex out there at left tackle. So this year a bit more so. I do think he kind of regressed a bit in that case. But like going back to Bain, watching him like that, just watching the speed to power, watching him with a long arm and single arm stick and post to guys, like he's able to do stuff with his arm length. Despite not being like just naturally what you want out of that, he still weaponizes to a point where it doesn't look any different than a guy that has 34, 35-inch arms who out there working it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Jim, I think we hit him pretty well. Where do you want to go from here?
So, Owen, where is your round one cutoff on your grades? Is it at 3 or is it at 4?
So I have true first round grades on Bain and Parker, and that's it.
Got it. And then,
so you think Keldrick Falk's undraftable is what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'm not there with it. I'm apparently not there with Keldrick Falk at all, even though he's my favorite pick for the Bills at the end of the first there.
So Newt, I'm looking at your board, and Derek Moore. So the Malachi Lawrence and Derek Moore tier, that's a round 2-3, correct?
Yeah, truthfully, I have Derek Moore on my grading as like a low round. No, that should be a round 2. Yeah, it should be around 2 grade, isn't it? Or maybe it's like a low round.
Well, so I'm looking at the color, right? So you have Howell, Mesidor, Young. That's the round 2 grade right there.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So
yes. You're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, so those guys, if I take a look at it, they're a high round 3 for me, is the way that I would describe them. They're a high round 3. It's more so like those 3 are kind of like in a bucket of themselves. And then you take like a little bit of a step down and you get your edge rushers that kind of fall from there in like the true round 3 fashion.
Yeah. So the reason I was asking is there's like 3 or 4 edges that are setting a barometer for the draft class. So we did an edge big board, like I said, with Jack Brentnall, Brian Maffey, Drew Collins, and their boards look nothing alike. I'll show them a little bit later on in the podcast. They're just a couple of screens down from this. But Derek Moore was one that they all agreed on, right? So there could be a lot of edges that are higher or lower than Moore, but Moore is at about the same spot on everybody's board. Newt looked like to me he had Moore about 20 spots higher than anybody else. So my instinct is when Newt's board comes out, most other people are saying it's a late round 3 on Moore, and based upon how I'm looking at Newt's board, if Newt's saying it's a very early round 3. So that's a difference of maybe 30 spots on the board.
Yes. So, I retract what I actually said. He is, as I would have it graded, like more of a late round 2 with mine. I'm still like, I play around with my stuff all the time, but yeah.
But on the player, like, I mean, you and I have been talking about Derek Moore for the better part of like 6 months, it feels like. So we were talking about him when we did the Michigan preview in July. Yeah. And he's got the prototypical size. So like a lot of the guys that are above him, let's say even like a Howell or a Bailey, like Derek Moore's going to be able to do some things that Howell or Bailey can't do. Right, just based upon his size profile, right?
Yeah, are you asking me?
Yeah, and I was looking at Owen, but of course he can't tell that I'm looking at him.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was like,
So I'll say this and then I'll bounce it to Owen. So, to your point about Derek Moore size is what you want. There's going to be questions on Bailey because of his weight. There's going to be questions on Howell because of his length. Like Howell's going to have to answer some of those questions as well about arm length. He's not nearly girthy enough compared to Ruben Bain, but he's still going to have some of those arm length issues. But when you come and you take a look at Derek Moore, you're looking at a guy that's built for the position. 6'3 3/8, 265 pounds, 33 7/8 inch arms, and 9 1/8 inch hands. That's going to be elements that like this is where you want to see your edge rusher being built. And then he pairs that when you take a look at his tape with high-end athleticism, good play speed, and those elements. So he's kind of built, in my opinion, in a way, how you want an edge rusher to be built, where you can be kind of, multiple in your alignments, and then you have the athletic tools to be able to deliver the juice. Owen, I don't know what you think.
For Moore specifically, yeah.
I
think he's a guy that I liked him a bit coming out of the summer. I know there was some, I think it was like Sam Teets. I was listening to another Draft Professor's show talking about the edge boards heading into the season. And I was high on both Michigan edge guys, both, one of which you're not going to see until the bottom of the next page. But Moore was one of the ones where they were kind of lower on. Like they weren't really understanding the hype around him. That he didn't really have a ton of like the athletic elite traits, especially when looking at summer scouting to kind of project him to be kind of a third round guy. But I ended up having him in that third round grade range where he's a player that I really did like, especially with some of the film that came out this year as well. He showed continuously what I liked from him when coming out of the summer scouting when we previewed Michigan last year. Has some explosiveness to his game, not the twitchiest guy, but has some explosiveness to his game. I think for me, despite he's getting up to the mid 250s, up to 260, I'm not really looking for a guy who's that size to be like the hardest edge setter, but you need to be able to set an edge a little bit harder than he does.
Yeah,
definitely is a guy that I think has a lot already when it comes to pass rushing ability and be able to be like at worst you're getting a DPR. But I do think he has shown improvements as a run defender. He just needs to continue to grow into his strength and figure out a way to best maximize how he could play as a run defender. Because just being like they run a little more of like a weird multiple odd front look in Michigan where he's both like on the edge, sometimes off the ball, in space, but also inside. Like they move him around a ton. And I feel like just getting him in a consistent spot where he can now figure out how to play run defense consistently can really help him out once you draft him and put him in your system.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think for of all 10 categories I have, 12 categories that I have for a player, run defense is absolutely the lowest for Derek Moore. It's one of those things where he's got the build, he's got the pass rush, he's got the strength, he's got the speed. He just has to set a harder edge. And I don't think at his weight, you said it really well. You're not expecting him to, plant himself as a tree and set a hard edge, but you just have to be able to put yourself in a situation where defenses have to at least respect kind of your presence there a little bit more than right now that they do.
Okay. And then Owen, you want to talk about Gabe Akis and Malachi Lawrence. And then just beware of whatever you say. Newt's going to say the opposite because for the most part, you two have those players flip-flop.
I thought I was relatively high on Lawrence. So just for clarifying sake, my first round grades go Bain, Parker, and then it's from Falk to Hopper, my second round grades, and then from height to someone who's not on the screen, Zion Young, in my 16th spot is where my third round grades end. So I have a lot of day 2 to day 1 grades. It's a decent class up top when it comes to that. But
our day 2 grades are like our top 2 days are exactly the same then because LT Overton is literally once again Santana Hopper is in my DTs. LT Overton is literally my last day 2 grade. That's hilarious.
Yeah. But for me, Akis, I was surprised it came in as high or comparatively so to other people than I did. He's a guy that 6'3", 270 looks big and thick on film, like looks like a big dude. And I feel like, it's maybe the consistency can get a bit better, but he definitely is a guy that, especially comparing to like who we just talked about, Derek Moore, can set a harder edge, can stack and shed and get off of blocks using that size, using that length he does have to affect the run that way. obviously there's still some room to grow, especially when it came to him being attacked against read options. He just wasn't really super highly keyed into that and can get kind of manipulated through that kind of stuff. But I do think as a stack and shed, even front run defender, base end, I think you could live with what he does as a run defender right away. Really active hands and hot motor, just absolutely fights through blocks all the time, and has a couple different ways to win as a pass rusher. He has a lot of power, obviously coming with that frame, but has some speed and can get around the outside of the arc a little bit and really challenge that, at least enough to keep tackles honest when asking them to get depth so he can execute some speed to power stuff. I'm not saying it's his greatest trait in the world, and I definitely gave him a lower grade on his flexibility. I think like out of a 10 scale, he got a 5. So I'm not expecting him to bend the corner, but there are different ways to win as an outside rusher, and the way he wins specifically is by generating power and ripping through that outside shoulder and reducing the angle as an outside rusher, as opposed to being a Cassius Howell where you're just bending around the entire way and beating them with pure speed. So it's not the speediest speed rush, but he can definitely attack the outside that way. And I felt like his inside twists and counters, like showing off that explosiveness and that burst, was something that was like I really loved that. And that's something that often doesn't really catch my eye as much. The last person who really caught my eye with how good he was at executing these was Trayvon Walker at Georgia. Like, he's a player that understands his role, understands how he uses his explosiveness and power to generate pass rush by executing these more designed play calls. So as a guy who can win a pass rush, I liked him. I think he has a lot more to add there, but he has a good framework with his power and some of his other moves to accent that, as well as being able to win through some more schemed up stuff. I think he's got room to grow, but I love his frame and I love his ability to win as a pass rusher already, and has some upside with the run defense. So I was a big fan of his.
Let me pick up just off of that, because I think the conversation is pretty similar. I don't have any disagreements with what you said. And when we talked about it, we had this conversation. I think just for me, and it's the frame and the way that he plays run defense, where it does not match. It makes no sense to me. I gave him the same run defense grade that I gave Derek Moore, and those two players should not be getting the same run defense grade. And it's maddening for me. It really is. And I think with Gabe Akis, the way that I see him is a guy that, like you said, he's got middling bend. He's got, a decent amount of speed, but he's not going to be, the super twitched up guy coming off the line. He's going to win with power. He's going to win on an inside move where he is able to kind of get to your shoulder, show off that strength, and then kind of close between that B gap. With that, I love it, and I love that place. But when you don't have that duality to your game, and you're kind of limited in being more of a power rusher and more of a guy that's going to kind of bowl through people, I think it does make you a little bit one-dimensional. One thing that kind of comes to my mind in regards to that is going to be, I did get a chance to watch Northwestern and Caleb Tiernan basically versus Gabe Akis, and you see the way that he's able to rush. He got Tiernan for 2 sacks, made him look silly on one, and this is a guy that I really like, but he basically got him to dip his head, and then Akis just exploded off his inside shoulder and completely went almost untouched for the sack. But then there's times where, one of the biggest things, if you take a look at Caleb Tiernan, is his run blocking. A lot of people will say is a little bit more middling. He's carrying Gabe Akis off to the side, and it's just such a polar difference in the way that he plays those two parts of the game, where I just felt that I can't give that guy, and it's just how my grades fell too, but it makes sense as I look at it, where I'm just a little too frustrated with kind of the tunnel vision nature to his game. And I think, I'll touch on Malachi Lawrence. I'll try to be pretty brief because we did talk about these guys a fair amount throughout the scouting process, but Lawrence was a guy, and we talked about him week 1 because we talked about kind of some of the hype. Did you say that of the guys that day, I can't remember the comment specifically, that he was the best pass rusher that we talked about that day? I think that was the comment.
I believe so, yeah. That's definitely where I have him, is like his main hat he's going to wear is going to be as a pass rusher. He
is juiced up as a pass rusher. He's got good twitch. He's got good athleticism, but the length and the way that he's able to play, 35-inch arms, 6'4", 63. He's able to win in a multitude of ways, convert speed to power really well. He's got a good bull rush, which makes defenders, have to kind of guard against their chest and that, just straight up move. But then he's got enough where he's able to get around the corner. I'm not saying he's the bendiest guy in the world, but he's able to win around the edge in so many different ways. And to me, he's a guy that sets the edge a little bit better than Gabe Akis does. I like his ability to be a true 3-down defensive end as it stands right now. He's got a weird build. He's got he's on the ground too much, and he's got a high missed tackle rate, and a lot of that's just going to, I think, come from, we talked about, he's high-waisted. It just is how it is. It's this, like, freaking Mack truck running around on 2 stilts, and you see him just looking to plow through people with this weird build. But he does a really good job when he's able to stay upright and keep that balance. The problem is he just struggles at times to keep that balance. But I think the way that he's played and the ability that his ability to affect the game in just a consistent way throughout the season. He's a 37% win percentage on true pass sets. He has been right around that 40 mark all year long, and he's been an impactful player. And obviously, with the level of competition that he faces, it's not going to be the SEC. It's not going to be the Big Ten. We're talking about for some of these other guys, but he's still facing Power 4 competition and showing up against it in a really, really big way.
Yeah, I think for me with Lawrence, we're seeing the players absolutely flipped. Because, like, for me, the biggest thing I had with Lawrence was, like, I don't know. I love his pass rush, and his athleticism really explodes off the screen. 6'4", 250 isn't the thickest frame out there. And I felt like that's where I didn't really love his game. And especially, like, in comparison to Akis, like we just talked about, I felt like Akis' ability to use his frame and use his length to take on blocks and stack and shed was something that, like, he could definitely build upon, but was something that was within there. Whereas Lawrence, if I'm going to see him get better as a run defender, I like him much more as a player in space, whether as a weak side even end or a wide 9 end, where he's able to operate in more space and put some more finesse moves while attacking the run, or even as a 3-4 backer, as a pass rusher type player there, where he's able to operate in more space and then maneuver through gaps and shoot gaps and be able to attack the run that way, as opposed to taking on blocks and jamming up gaps and trying to two-gap it more so. So I trusted Akis a bit more with that. I do think the Northwestern game with Akis, just to jump back to that real quick, was a bit misleading with that, just because he had a really good run defense grade, but it was also, like, super snowy, hard to keep your kind of footing.
It was. The start of the game, it was the whole field was white.
Yeah, so, like, that game, I think definitely, especially early on, I can see where that opinion came from. But even, like, that game and the Duke game where he missed a lot of tackles, which kind of brought down the run defense grade, but he did do a much better job, especially against, like, a Brian Parker setting edge and being able to play that way. But back to Lawrence, again, I think great pass rusher, can win with speed, bend, power, has a bunch of great lateral movement for a guy who's 250 plus. It's just going to be finding the right scheme for him to work at, where he's going to be a guy who can play 3 downs for me. Whereas I don't think he's as clean of a fit into every single scheme when you're asking to be a run defender. I do think he can be a 4-3 end. I just wouldn't hold your breath having him be the point of attack run defender if they just run weak side counter at him constantly and throw polars at him to absorb that contact and make those big plays. Whereas other guys, I do definitely think he can make those plays better than him.
That's fair. I like that. I'm just and just to kind of take a look at the board in general, kind of like taking a look at the whole thing besides those 2 guys. I will say there's a handful of things that, like, I've kind of noticed and I really appreciate. Number one, our top 3 is the same, which I absolutely love, because I feel like I've been getting shit for having TJ Parker still the 1st round grade. And I love that you still have him there, even as edge 2, regardless. Keldrick Falk, love that. I love the love for Max Llewellyn. As, like, he should
be so much higher on this board. Like, it makes me so mad.
He was like edge 3 for me going like for summer scouting, and it's just like he didn't take the step forward, but still he's a nasty pass rusher. The point that I think I'm the most pissed about is I thought Will Helt was my guy, but apparently he's not my guy. He's your guy, and it's pissing me off.
If you would have asked me this back after when did summer scouting, when I had just watched the Purdue tape, I had him with, like, a UDFA grade. I I hated Will Held coming out of Purdue because he looked like he was like 6'6", 260, but they had him playing as like an off-ball linebacker, and he just playing in that scheme and that system with as much space as they put him in. He didn't look as like a great athlete because he just looked stiff and was unable to operate in that much space. But now that playing as like a more even front end for Clemson, it like really started to pop for me. So he's a guy that I fell more in love with, especially recently. So I'm up there with the second round grade. I think he's a guy that should return to school, especially if Parker comes out, because then he could be a guy that jumps up even higher in the rankings.
That's the thing, is I've got a third round grade on him, and man, like I could easily, and like he's still 60, he's number 62 on my board. My board's going to change a lot, but like he's still, sniffing that like true top 64. But I think he's got a lot to gain. I think it's going to depend on really where the Bledsoe grades come back for him. I think it's going to be a big determination for that.
Okay, so the question I have for both of you is, which one of you is going to be president of the Akeem Mesidor fan club?
That's Owen. I'm not going to take that from him. It's got to be Owen.
So do injuries factor in, or is everything that we're looking at here based upon film grade? Because, I mean, you guys did a great job podcasting on Mesidor. His film is worthy of where you have him ranked, but there's an age and an injury factor that's probably going to push him down a little bit.
Agreed, and that's why I'm kind of cautious to take the Pyre as like the head, guy for the Mesidor fan club, because like I love his film grade. Like, this ranking exclusively is based off of film grade. I don't have a way to factor in injuries or age or anything like that. That's kind of more like a vibe thing for me when it comes to like doing mock drafts or projecting stuff. Yeah, it's the vibe. So Mesidor is like,
I guess it's so stupid. It's like two freaking 14-year-olds podcasting. Last week was 6'7", and this week was just a vibe. Go on, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm derailing.
The Mesidor vibes are absolutely not Ohio. But he's a guy that he plays really well. And I just don't have a way to really factor that into my rankings. Like, I'm sure if I factored in his age or his injury history, he'd be much lower, especially behind like a David Bailey or Cassius Howell, who have like the athleticism and not the injury question marks as much. But for me, that just kind of makes me a little cautious to back that up, because I can also see a world where he comes in drafted in later rounds because of that stuff, and he just blows it up and becomes like a really early steal candidate. But then also I see him coming in and can get banged up in his first training camp and just never get off the ground running, because that's just the case with him. I'd rather bet on the tape and see if I can get the most out of him, but I also probably wouldn't take him where I have him ranked in my big board specifically because of that stuff.
Yeah, I like that. I think so. For me, I've got three kind of categories that don't fall into my ranking, but I track, and it's going to be injury history or medical is obviously one, character concerns, and then effort concerns. You think about last year with your Walter Nolans, and then Kayvon Thibodeaux is a really good example of a player that might fall into that category. I've got those as like markings, and it doesn't factor into the grade. I think for me, when I take a look at my rankings, that's what I see on film. That's what I see with that player. And there's going to be some characteristics that might not be like true exactly to film, like their build, and then some other elements. But it's going to be pretty much what you see is how I rank them. But if I was going to do a mock draft, kind of to Owen's point, I'm going to then start to take in some of those, tertiary factors when we're starting to look at this guy, and Akeem Mesidor. There's going to be some elements that people are concerned with, and they take a look at there. And obviously with that, I think it's going to play a huge role. You take a look at Mike Green, and last year, there's a reason everyone knows that he fell to where he did. It was not the tape. And I think it's going to be true to form when you take a look at his grade for Consensus Media. It doesn't factor in those character concerns that you had about him, but the character concerns are what caused him to fall where he did.
Yeah. So, Randy, I think specifically it will depend on what the injuries are. So with Deion Walker, he's a really tall player, and he had a back injury. Right? That scared GMs into taking him day 3. I'm very happy that Buffalo traded up in round 4 to go get him. Right? He's probably right now he's looking like he's Buffalo's best draft pick of the last cycle. Or let me rephrase that. Maybe it's Jackson Hawes, but
The Maxwell Harrison disrespect.
What was that?
The Maxwell Harrison disrespect.
If Harrison didn't play the first whatever number of games, right?
That's fair.
But
talk about a guy with injury and character concerns.
Yeah, I think it depends on the injury, right? Because like if it's the back or a knee, it'll be one thing. But if it's like a torn bicep, or like Shaq Lawson had a shoulder something the year he was drafted, right? That to me, the shoulder is different than the knee, or the shoulder is different than the back. So it's not having an injury history; it's what was injured.
And I think also, and because I know Randy asked this earlier about Kalijah Kancey, and you know the struggles that he's going through. I think that there are going to be some elements that you have to look at given a player. So like a Tez Johnson or a Tank Bigsby, not a Tank Bigsby, a Tank Dell. You have to look at it in terms of how that player is built. So I'm very low on small receivers because of the track record of that, not because that the injuries that they have are necessarily like bad injuries for receivers, but because they're small, they're more prone. And I think the Kalijah Kancey comment that Randy made earlier is pretty true to form with that. When you're battling in the trenches and you're 20 pounds lighter than everyone else, you're going to face some of that opportunity to be more prone to injury. And it's the nature of it. And so I think anytime you have a guy that is smaller or on the flip side, excessively large, I'm taking a look at like DeJuan Jones or someone like that, you're going to see it there as well.
You must have hated Troy Franklin, huh?
No, I didn't like him. I do not like small receivers. I
had a first round grade on him. I loved him.
If you are 175 pounds or lighter, you're gonna have a hell of a time trying to get out of day 3 for me.
Devonta Smith would like to have a word with you.
Yeah, well, there's always an outlier.
So
they just named 3 of them: Tank Dell, Devonta Smith, Troy Franklin.
Look at Tank Dell's injuries. That
was a freak. The leg injury.
It's because he's tiny. He's a small human being. I am like 50% larger than that man.
Well, with that, let's talk about the defensive tackle board. So the defensive tackle boards are more different than the edge boards, but more different basically means that players 11 through 15 are different. So Newt's board, Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, Amari Washington, Kristen Miller, Caden McDonald, Dominique Orange, Aaron Graves, Lee Hunter, Ahmad Moten, James Smith, Zane Durant, Daryl Jackson Jr., Santana Hopper, Grayson Halton. The players that are on Owen's board further down that haven't been mentioned: Dante Corleone at 11, Chris McClellan at 12, Skylar Gill Howard at 13, Cole Brevard at 15, I believe are the differences. And all of that. So Randy, if you're checking my math in the chat, none of this was rehearsed or counted. So I was doing that live.
I have an amendment to make. Somewhere in there I screwed up, and Dante Corleone should be 14 for me. I don't know. Oh, I didn't put a 15. So that's why I've only got 14 on there. I missed Dante Corleone. So he should have been 14 and Grayson Halton's 15.
Okay.
Why do you hate nose tackles, Newt?
I don't hate nose tackles, bro. I've got Cade McDonald as 5. I got him higher than you.
You're right. That's fair. I'm just saying Corleone being at 15 or at 14, but also Brevard, McClellan, Corleone, McDonald, Hunter, and Orange, and Washington. Half my players are nose tackles.
So
I've got 102 spots outside of you. I've got Brevard. So Brevard's 19 for me. Who else are you like yapping on about that?
Chris McClellan. Why do you hate Chris McClellan?
Well, hold on. So Newt is James Smith, who's probably going to return to school, but I know both of you liked him when we covered him.
I love James Smith, dude. Like, I mean, Tim, I'm not looking for Tim Keenan the third to like catch any strays here, but like he's just kind of a guy, and he's just there. And James Smith, he's got some juice to him.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm surprised if I would be surprised if he and Christian Miller both don't go back.
Do you think Christian Miller will go back?
He's a guy that I feel like I think we said this when we were covering the D tackle class when we first covered Miller. I said I really liked him, but like I would want him to go back because then he could be D tackle 1 next year.
But dude, I think with Miller, what you see is what you get. And how much you think Miller's going to get in NIL money? Like,
but if you're drafted in round 2, you're going to make about $8 million guaranteed.
That's
right?
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, do I think Christian Miller can get drafted in round 2? Yes. Do I think that he's going to get 7 figures in NIL? Absolutely not. I don't know Georgia. Maybe he's getting 6 figures in NIL, but it's not like a high 6 figures. So a year, and I don't know. Here's the other thing that I've always thought about this. How enticing is it for these guys to go back to college and just live the college life for one more year where they're just like, F it, we ball. And they just have that college experience for one more year. I'm honestly kind of curious from like, an outsider looking in because I loved college. I thought it was phenomenal. Obviously, these guys are putting in a lot of work, but I think that there is an element to that where, man, you are carefree living, especially for some of these guys. They put in a ton of work for football, but that's about it. And so I don't know, maybe like, hey, go back, run it back for a national championship. If they win it, I could see it.
I see it a lot more for like quarterbacks, not as much like trench guys.
Yeah, and I, Drew Aller was the one that kind of like probably got me on this spiral where I'm like laying in the bed at 11 o'clock at night thinking about this, not sleeping like I should be, but I digress. Christian Miller, I think he should come out. I think that I don't know how much my grade's going to change on him. I don't know how much information he's getting that like, he's going to go from a second to a first. I think he should come out.
Hold on, let me just pull up his stats real quick. Go ahead, Jim.
I'd like to clarify. Ahmad Moten is a round 3 grade, and James Smith is a day 3 grade, right?
No, those. Yeah. I'm sorry. So I haven't quite mastered the colors yet. I apologize.
Not a problem. I'm mastering. I'm mastering the colors, and I was the one that designed it. So we're good.
Moten is a round 3. James Smith is like, if you had in your system a 3-4 tier, James Smith would be in that 3-4 tier. But yeah, James Smith is just barely a day 3 grade.
Okay, so one of the reasons I love podcasting with Newton Owen is that we can get into debates about day 3 players. So for the next few minutes, we're going to have the battle of the day 3 defensive tackles. So first of all, Owen, Chris McClellan, is that a day 3 grade for you, or is that around a day 2 grade?
Let's see. I'm pretty sure he's day 2. I'll just double check.
What?
Yeah. No, you're right. No, you're right. He's day 3. He's early round 4. He's with like up there with Corleone.
Okay. So you had McClellan in your top 15. Newt didn't even list him. Tell Newt why he's wrong.
Newt, you're wrong and he's been wrong since we covered him. I will stay consistent from when we first covered him in that week. And I got backup. When we did draft a team, I drafted Chris McClellan as my nose tackle, and everyone was like,
that's a great doesn't mean you're right. Ow.
They're like, oh, that's a great pick.
They felt bad for you. They're being nice to you.
Chris McClellan is a nose tackle. He's a big old dude. Will sit in the middle of your defensive line, and he can take up and two-hand one offensive lineman in each hand and impact the run that way where you have to send doubles at him. In the same way, while I don't think he has a ton of versatility in his pass rush toolkit, which is where Newt is correct, he's not a great pass rusher. But what he does have in there is he's a decent athlete enough to get off his spot and move around when it comes to stunting and crashing and opening up holes for other guys. Or if he's going to be a true pass rusher, say it's a third and late down, he's on the field, which maybe take him off for like a reducing inside edge rusher or something. He's not your first candidate to stay out there. But if he is stuck out there on an obvious passing down, he can power through your face. Like he has strength in his hands to drive you back into the pocket. And so you have to send a double team to him to make sure you don't have that pocket collapse and get absolutely hammered.
Is that day 4 player?
Good job, Brandon. So first of all, I will say
I'm using that from now on, Brandon. That was so funny.
So I think out of all the podcasts that covered Chris McClellan, I felt like you guys were a little bit lower on him than most of the others. But Newt, you have Zane Durant in your top 15. He didn't sniff Owen's top 15. Tell Owen why he's wrong on Zane Durant.
Because he's actually an athletic player on the inside that can cause some disruption. Zane Durant, he's going to be an undersized defensive lineman. There's like no two ways about it. But he still has actually decent length. He's 6'1", but 32 and an 1/8 inch arms, which when you can put that together, you absolutely love to see. Plus, he's got the meaty hooks, 10.5 inch hands. And so with that, you've got a guy that he's got good length. He's got good burst off the line. He knows how to be an effective player when it comes to pass rush. He's going to lack a power pass rush game. There's no two ways about it. He's going to give up, 10 to 15 pounds to the players that he's playing across from. And it's going to be an uphill battle for that. But the way that he's going to be able to get off the line and get in their chest right away with that decent length as an interior guy, and then with that pop, he does enough where he can be a disruptor on the middle. Now, I don't know if you're dedicating constantly 2 guys to him. If you are, phenomenal. Yeah, let the little guy feast. But he's going to be able to go one-on-one with a guy across the line from him. And he's got enough length, enough athleticism to get off that, play well in run defense, and then beyond that, just juice that he brings you in pass rush. It is a passing league. The people want to throw the ball. You need guys that can stop that on the inside and on the outside. Zane Durant cracks my top 15 because of his ability for that. I will say, after our conversation, I did go back and I watched the Oregon game. I did drop him a little bit. So actually, because Igbaragba, I can never say his name.
Matini Baragba.
Yeah.
Ibaragba and then Barry Alexander. I had both those guys ahead of him because both of those guys went back to school. Zane Durant ended up moving up a little bit. So I did drop him actually from our conversation after watching the Oregon game that Owen suggested. But I still like him, man. I still think he's a phenomenal guy inside. Has some anchor issues because of the frame, but the quick twitch that he brings from that 1 and 3, from that 3-tech roll, not a 1-tech. Who am I kidding? From that 3-tech roll.
Tell me something that Zane Durant does that Skylar Gill-Howard doesn't do better.
I don't know. He's got 3 inches on him. What is Skylar Gill-Howard? He's 5'10", isn't he?
He's listed. No, I think this is a big grain of salt. Listed 6'1", 290.
That's a lie. I have spring measurements. He's 5'11" and 7/8. He's not 6 foot.
Puna Ford would like to have a chat.
He's got cool. He's got 30 and 5-inch arms. He's got the length. That's going to be the difference between Zane Durant and Skylar Gill-Howard. It is going to be the argument of length, and it's going to be what he does with that. I think that Gill-Howard is going to be a little bit more of an outlier in terms of those measurables, and I think I see it on film even a little bit more. I think that with the elements that I see from Zane Durant, he has, and I'm not saying he's got a great anchor, but he's got a hell of a lot better anchor than Gill-Howard. I think Gill-Howard just gets eaten up. He has no ability to stack and shed because of the weight, because of the length, and it really kills him. He's got pop. He's got juice. I'll give him that. But that's kind of where it stops for him.
So see, I'm on the opposite side of that with Durant. I saw him, especially again. I watched the Oregon game, but I watched a couple of the other games as well where he did a fair bit better. But as a run defender and as a guy that if you're not asking him to just shoot a gap in run defense, he's getting washed out anyway. Imagine him going one-on-one against Jonah Savanaia, against like if like he was going 1-on-1 in the B gap against him, he's getting his lunch fed to him personally by that man. Like he is not doing anything.
But
While Gil Howard,
tell me why Gil Howard's gonna kick Savanaia's ass.
well, he relies a lot on, and what I think is the big conversation here is going to be the impact of length as an interior defensive lineman. Like I thought Zane Durant's best reps was when he was at edge because he has length and he has the athleticism and he has the size to be able to set a hard edge because he is a bigger guy. But when he's inside, he's getting his ass kicked by 310 plus pound guys. Gil Howard is short of length, and that was one of the things that I really didn't like about him. Prior to today, I had him listed as a guy that was like, oh, he'll be a preseason favorite, but I don't think he's rosterable. And I went back and watched some of the other games, including the Oregon State game, which I skipped initially. And just the way he is short, but the way he has some natural leverage to his game and had a bit more pop in his hands than I gave him credit for initially, I do think he's a guy that, while you do not want him one-on-one with Savanaia, I think he can maybe survive a bit better than a guy like Durant does, who you try to go against Savanaia, who has like super long arms for a guard anyway. Now your length battle is totally kind of neutralized there, and now you're just looking for a guy that can try to maybe get off that block or beat into a spot. I think I trust Gil Howard to do that more so with a little bit more anchor than Durant has.
What I heard was you took 8 shots of Jack Daniels. We're like, let's pop on the Gil Howard tape. And you're like, I love this guy.
Let's throw on the Michael Jackson.
So, Owen, I'm going to kick this question to you after Owen. But, Owen, what's more likely to happen? Chris McClellan drafted by the Packers or Zane Durant drafted by Buffalo?
Well, okay. I think heavily Zane Durant drafted by Buffalo.
Really?
Because the Packers already have Stackhouse. They brought him in. They have other guys.
Stackhouse is a UDFA. Like,
does he play snaps on game day? Does he play snaps on game days?
Because we traded Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt out for this season. We're putting him in there out of necessity, not out of want. There's a difference.
Fair. I also think that the type of player that the Bills love at 3-tech with that gap shooting is exactly what Durant is, like super athlete. Maybe realistically, because of what they invested in last year's draft class, it'll probably be McClellan to the Packers, which in that case, I'd have to buy Newt another Packers jersey with McClellan on it, with how much he's hating on him this draft cycle. But I do think those are the two teams I think would love those two skill sets specifically. I do think it's a good shout for you, Jim. The only other thing that I take with more disrespect than Newt disrespecting Chris McClellan is the fact that Newt thinks I drink Jack Daniels.
He sent me this whole thing over the summer of like the whiskey journey he's been on. It was like a book, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was a book and it had a bunch of different whiskeys in it.
We're currently enjoying Chris Stapleton's Travelers.
See,
I've not tried that. I want to try it now.
It's so good. I love it. It's a blended Canadian.
We've gone 53 minutes into the podcast, and you haven't noticed that DeMonte Capehart didn't make Owen's list.
Oh, shit. You're right. Damn. I didn't realize you found out he was finally undraftable.
Well, okay. Hold on. Pause right there. He is currently D-tackle 19 on my board. He is behind. So of the list you can't see anymore. It goes Brevard, then Aaron Hall, then Zane Durant. So Zane Durant almost made the list. Then it's Capehart, Rashawn Benny, Cameron Ball, David Oki, CJ Fight, some other guys that are kind of like later day 3 dudes. But
yeah, that's
Capehart. I finally came to the realization what Capehart does that I love, which is be a bit better of a typical athlete for a 1-tech, but also be like a dominant, long arms, heavy hands, nose tackle. He does that excellently. I just was giving him, especially coming into the season, a lot more credit as a guy that could maybe generate pass rush in a way that a Chris McClellan does, where if you're not winning a one-on-one battle, you're at least drawing a double team and leaving your other guys with one-on-one opportunities. Capehart, I felt like, was able to do that in the past. He's just very much flatlined and regressed when it came to being able to dominate that way. Either whether it's his pads getting higher, he just doesn't have the juice and pass rush anymore. So I do think he's a guy that if you need a 1-tech to stop the run, like the Packers, you can definitely grab a Capehart, which I'll definitely buy another Packers jersey if you get Capehart, because that's what he's going to do. He'll do that well. whereas a guy like McClellan, Corleone, some of the other nose tackles we talked about, Daryl Jackson Jr. even had that pass rush upside.
Yeah, we can go back and do you want to hit this now or do you want to finish up?
Oh yeah, let's take the comment now. Newt, what do you think?
So I think Kamara is 16 for me actually. Let me double check. Okay, so Kamara is 16 for me, so I will mention that. Lubin comes up. Ryan Sparks, close your ears real quick. 19 for me, and then I got a long ways to go to get to Anthony Lucas. He was 26. Let me start with Anthony Lucas. He just the build, the athleticism. It's all there. Like he's got length. He's got speed. He has the ability to create a firm edge in rush. But the problem is he's just over his time in the league and at USC and Texas A&M. He has never been able to put it together. He's not an effective pass rusher, and it's kind of an element of a guy that he's got all of those pieces there. It's almost like that joke we have about Daryl Jackson Jr. But he's not even as sexy as Daryl Jackson Jr., where Daryl Jackson Jr. is like, drop dead gorgeous. You see him walking around the corner, you're like, damn. Anthony Lucas, you're like, oh hey, yeah, nah, you cute. It's an element where you have a really, really great kind of like build and athletic profile for the position, but over 4 seasons, he's not been able to put it together. I'm not seeing, the technical side that goes into the game. He's gonna get a shot somewhere because of the build, because of the athleticism. I've got him still, with a late day 3 grade. I really don't see, any more that's gonna say, hey, after 4 years in college and still this like void in terms of your technical approach to the game. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't know. Owen, do you want to touch on him or any of the other 2 guys?
I would love to do that. First off, hold on. I forgot I had this pulled up before because I was going to pull up Lubin's stats real quick. Just to toss it back to our Christian Miller conversation about him coming back. The reason I would want him to go back is because he had 0 sacks this year and last year. Like getting some production can jump him into the first round. That was the point I meant to make about half an hour ago. But back to the edges. First off, I would have to say, Ryan Sparks, you don't have to cover my ears because I'm happily to disrespect anybody who defends Clev Lubin. No, I'm kidding, but I'm kidding for the most part. I have Kamara as edge 20. He's 1 spot behind. So it goes Zion Young, Tyreek Sapp, Trey Moore, Adam Trick, which we are not talking about Adam Trick enough. I'm just saying. And then Mikael Kamara is at 20. And then further down, Clev Lubin is at 24 for me. And then Anthony Lucas is at 27, with Lucas being the highest grade I've given for my round 6 or 7s. So Lubin, I have him in the same range as like who was the edge from LSU last year, Braden Swinson. I think that's perfect for Clev Lubin, like a guy that comes in. I wasn't overly impressed with him as like an elite athlete, similar or not. I'll just stick with him first. Lubin was a guy that wasn't impressed as being like an elite athlete. He definitely produced. And he works hard for his sacks, and he contributes definitely. But there's just nothing about his game that goes above and beyond into like the elite stratosphere, or even pushing towards that, knocking on the door. Where I'm like, okay, this is a guy that I want to bank on traits to match that production. He's a lot of production is carrying what he does. When it comes to Lucas, I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to a guy that like I wrote down like at least 4 or 5 different times that he flashes greatness in his game because he has the size, he has athleticism, but he was never able to dominate his level of competition. Where I want to see him be a dude that's just throwing dudes around. Like throwing in his tape and then throwing on Ruben Bain's tape, like you can tell like he's probably a better pure athlete than Bain is, but like the way that Bain just executes more properly is better. And there's a reason Shamar Stewart's going to get drafted in the first round, and Clev Lubin will be a 3rd rounder at best. Just saying. The traits will always be highly valued than production at the NFL level. That's also a reason why Swinson wasn't drafted until the 5th round. by the Patriots, and he's not doing much right now either.
God, was he 5th round? Damn.
He was
And
5th round by the
I think he
Patriots.
actually got cut. He was one of the few draft
my
picks that actually got
God.
cut coming out of training camp.
Holy shit, dude. He was getting 2nd round buzz. Like,
I had him like round 4, and I was getting crucified in the Buffalo Bills group chat about
I believe
not wanting
that.
Braden Swinson.
I can't remember where I think I had him like round 3.
Oh, I mean,
But-
Josh had a first round grade on him,
Yeah.
right? I mean, yeah.
So, I like the question that Randy asked. I don't know how I flipped up Anthony and Randy. Schools coaches in when I think of defensive line prospects, I think Texas number 1. And just the number of guys that they have been able to kind of push out of that system. You take a look at Devondre Sweat, Byron Murphy II, last year when you have God, why am I blanking on this player's name?
You're talking about Texas?
Yeah, Texas.
Oh, it was
6-year senior. He was a really good.
Alfred
player.
Collins.
Yeah,
Alfred Collins. Thank you so much. And then they've got defensive ends that come from there. I think Texas has just been able, and Brevard this year has been able to just kind of continuously churn out NFL talent. And then Georgia's Georgia. It's just how they're built. You take a look at compared to the players to Texas. Georgia does it on another level. They really, really do. It's not just going to be your first round draft picks, your Jordan Davises of the world, your Jalen Carters. It's going to be damn near every guy that plays in that line is going to be of an NFL talent. And, we're talking about Kristen Miller here being both of our top 5 defensive linemen. And it just kind of continues on. Kamara last year, not Kamara. I'm terrible. At names. Walker last year, and just kind of goes throughout.
Yep.
I think you missed the number 1 pick with both of your choices.
Oh, really?
Texas, I get, especially for the interior defensive linemen, but their edges, I've always kind of been like Joseph Asai, even Trey Moore this year. Like a lot of their edges, I'm not.
I'll give you that. I was definitely thinking more through the lens of interior players, but no, that's totally fair. That Texas, the edge talent, you don't get as much from there. Are you going to say Ohio State?
I'm definitely going to say Ohio State.
Okay, yeah, that makes
tackles
sense.
And edges, yes.
Yeah, when you start putting edges into it, then you're absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I think even D tackles. You talk about Ty Hamilton, and I'm doing it.
Tyreek Williams last year. Tyreek
Williams last year.
Tyreek Williams,
and then Cade McDonald this year. The Ohio State is definitely going to be just a big player in the game. So I think I agree with you on those 3.
And then I feel like Michigan goes in cycles because Michigan, it's not every year. Like literally, it looks like schools like Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Georgia, Alabama literally reload every year.
Yeah.
And I feel like Michigan, it's every 3 years. We have some defensive linemen that are turning our heads.
Yeah, you got your Aiden Hutchinsons of the world, and last year your Kenneth Grants and your Mason Grahams. God, who's the guy?
Mozzie Smith.
Mozzie Smith. I was not high on
Mozzie Smith.
I hated Mozzie Smith.
Of course, because he's the one tech nose tackle. Of course you hated him, dude.
It's because he's I'm not going to get into it. It's just going to be the element of, there's going to be guys that are like really, really high and guys that come out. I think no matter what, Michigan's going to be a team where you focus on their defensive line. But you said it really well, Jim.
Alabama's a curious one, especially since they have that turncoat at head coach in Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah,
where he goes there, and when the Saban era, you had dudes like Quinn Williams. You had edges. I remember the one year was Anthony Jennings, and there was another edge on the other side that everyone was talking about. And every year there was an edge rusher or a D tackle. Will Anderson.
Years ago, you had Braswell and you had Dallas Turner coming out together.
Yeah, they had a factory pumping out those guys. And then as soon as the board took over, it kind of reflects. I mean, they had some guys this year, especially with some of the guys we had listed, even if they're going to go back to school. But
Hugh Russo, I really do like a lot. I'm excited for him. He's redshirt sophomore there.
But even looking back at DeBoer's time at Washington, he produced really good receivers and he produced Michael Penix, but Braylon Trice didn't last in the league. I forget what ZPF didn't last in the league. A lot of those guys on the D line for Washington at his time there just did not pop as an NFL prospect as much as some of the other guys do. And you're seeing that now. Alabama's still Alabama. You're going to get a lot of dudes from the South that are just high-level talents when it go to the brand. But as a coach that recruits or develops D-line players, and I'm not just saying this because I think the current D-line coach is also the former UB coach that abandoned UB to the Wolves really late in the cycle, but they haven't been able to develop guys as much as they have in the past and be a dominant force. Like we're talking about Ohio State, Michigan, even ahead of Alabama. That's insane to me thinking about that. Like even like 4 or 5 years ago, having Alabama anywhere other than like 2.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
Okay, so what are your, I guess, Owen, I'll kick it to you first. What are your initial thoughts on, like, if a team is desperate for defensive line help, is it better value early, or do you like the guys late? Like, what do you think about, like, the 64 or 80 players that we've evaluated and, like, what the quality of the class is?
I think edge rusher for this class, you're going to want to go a little bit earlier. Like Bain, Parker, Falk, even like if you want more skill specific with Howell or Bailey, you're going to get guys. And I think that's what the cutoff would be for like maybe potential first round players, where you have guys that come in and can be dominant pass rushers. If you need like you need juice to your pass rush to create sacks. Towards the top of that edge class, you're going to get some guys who are more skill specific. Your Max Llewellyns, your Derek Moores, your Will Heltz, your the players like that are going to come in and you'll play, but they're not going to be anything other than like really good number 2s at their ceiling. Whereas with D tackles, I think later into the day, like the only first round grade I had for D tackles was Peter Woods. Everyone else was round 2, round 3, or day 3. And even looking through that, like we talked about Capehart, he could be a starting nose tackle for an NFL team because he just does what you want from a starting nose tackle. There's a bunch of guys that have super hyper specific skill sets that can be those players at the NFL level as well as what they've been doing in college, but they're not all around players.
Yeah.
Capehart, Aaron Hall as a 3-tech gap shooter. We talked about Grayson Halton, another guy that's a 3-tech gap shooting pass rush type 3-tech. Chris McClellan as a nose tackle. Even going further down, like David Oki, I'd be fine with him as a rotational nose tackle. Like there's a bunch of dudes in this class that you're going to get in early to late or late day 2, early day 3 that are going to be starters for you at D tackle if you know what the skill set you need is and what you can target with those guys.
So, Newt, how do you feel about the depth of the defensive tackle class specifically? Do you see it the same way Owen did, or do you see it a different way?
Yeah, I agree with everything Owen said on that. With the defensive tackle group, I think that, and I have Caleb Banks as a first round grade as well. I think that he's going to be a little bit hampered by the injury that he went through this year. Obviously, the pre-draft process is going to be really important for him. But I think after that, Owen said it really well. You get guys that are a little more specific to a certain trait and a characteristic. What we might have liked from a Dominique Orange really kind of exploding and being that dominant 3-down player. He's kind of regressed a little bit in terms of his pass rush. I know I was really high on Aaron Graves coming in over the summer, and he's still a really good pass rusher, but he just hasn't been that presence that I've been looking for in run defense. So I think with all those guys, you're kind of picking, I don't want to say picking your battle, but you're choosing a player based on the outcome that you're looking for to fill the needs of your team. And with that, it's going to drive the conversation a little bit further back where it's not an overall player. And we've talked about this so often on this podcast where players that get drafted higher are players that are 3-down players. As you start losing your impact that you're going to make on a per snap basis for a team, you're going to get drafted a little bit later. And I think that's where this defensive tackle group falls in. For me, I actually think the edge group is kind of in the same manner. I don't necessarily have the same thought as Owen where like I'm, hey, grab them while you can. I think this group, I would love to obviously have one of the top guys, but Keldrick Falk, perfect example. I've got a first round grade on him. I know Owen's got a high second round grade on him. He's going to be a damn good run defensive end. I think he's got some juice to be impactful as a pass rusher. But, he is still, even in that regard, a little limited. TJ Parker has the tools to be an impactful defensive end, but he didn't show that this year. We're questioning Ruben Bang's length. So there's a lot of elements of these guys, even at the top, where we're like, I still don't have that bona fide dude there. So I would actually even put the defensive end grouping in that category of I'm looking day 2, potentially for a guy that I can get to fill a hole. And then obviously I think there's going to be a lot of options in day 3.
So I think a lot of what the D tackles is going to be, or even look the edges later on, is going to be a lot of guys that fill the same exact role, and the interview process and just finding guys who you like character-wise. Like the interview process in the Combine and the Senior Bowl, where you're talking to teams, is going to be the most important this year than it did for any other year, especially like not realizing how spoiled we were last year with the D tackle class we had or the edge class we had in years prior. Like this is really going to stress those opportunities in those all-star circuits.
Agreed.
So Randy, I want to take this question. So this is a really good one. And actually, my answer was inspired. My son was watching a Detroit Lions game on Sunday, and Jameson Williams popped into my head. So Jameson Williams went in round 1. He missed most of his senior year with an injury. JSN went in round 1. He missed a lot of his senior year with an injury. Caleb Banks missed a lot of his senior year with an injury. But the Senior Bowl for Caleb Banks is going to be huge, and he's already committed to going. So, I mean, there was debates in the summer, Peter Woods, Caleb Banks. There were people within draft professors that liked Banks more over the summer. So
I was not one of those people.
Right. Same. But like I know Clint specifically was.
Yeah.
Specifically was. But he's not.
I can see it.
Yeah. So, like, Banks, is it concerning? Well, you're concerned, but that doesn't mean that you're going to not draft him. If your team needs a defensive tackle in this draft, if you need like a impact defensive tackle, I don't know that Banks gets out of the top 20.
You think so? You think Banks top 20 lock?
I'm not going to say lock, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I'm trying to think.
His most comfortable position is at a 5 tech, though. So I feel like if you're a team that runs an odd front, you could definitely look at him inside the top 20. But if you're an even front team, I think you're going to have some pause with Banks specifically. Like, what is his true position in our even front? Is he a 1 tech? Is he a 3 tech? Do we put him wherever we think he can fit? Is he going to be at the end for us? Like, what is his position like for an even front team?
I'm trying to think. I want to say where I've seen him in the mock drafts that I've done and that I've seen, Carolina is like a really popular destination for him. But yeah, to that point, like that 4-eye is going to be, the home where you want him just because of the length that he brings. He's just such a unique build, and the way that he moves at that build is what puts him in this conversation that we're having.
How he was used at Florida is how you should use him in the pros.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yep. And doesn't Carolina already have some really expensive defensive tackles under contract?
They have like nose tackle types guys. They got that guy from the Rams, because they have who's the top 10 pick they took at nose tackle. Derek Brown.
Yeah.
They have Derek Brown. They have who's the D tackle who was in free agency last year from the Rams. They grabbed him as well, and then they invested some draft picks. Like they do run that 3-4 system where Nick Scorton is more of like an outside linebacker type edge rusher. So Caleb Banks would fit their scheme. I think the Tennessee Titans at like pick 33, if they end up getting the first overall pick, or like 34, 35, wherever they are in the top of the second, that could be a phenomenal landing spot for him because they have that odd front as well, where they have Oladejo as an outside rusher. They've invested in guys like that consistently, and you have now him and Jeffrey Simmons as your 5 techs, and then Tavondre Sweat as your 0 tech. That's a crazy front.
Yeah. Just with Carolina, A'Shawn Robinson currently is their starting nose tackles listed by our lads. So I wouldn't mind flipping that out. But yeah, Derek Brown, I think that's going to obviously be like the guy, and then Sean Wharton on the other side. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, where I see that. But no, I definitely get it with like Tennessee too. If you can get him where he's going to be playing that odd front, man, that's going to be like his bread and butter.
Cool. Well, Newt, why don't we pause for podcaster identification? Do you want to let everybody know about Zero Tech and all of the things that you do?
Absolutely. So, Newt Weston, you can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at NFL_Draft_Weston. I do run ZeroTechDraft.com. I've been putting up there some of my quick scouting reports on mostly defensive ends in this class. I'm going to be turning 2 defensive tackles some point and then getting the top 10, I would say, up there based on what we've taken a look at. I'll also be updating mock drafts, my position rankings once I start getting through all the groups, etc. and so on. I also have had the awesome opportunity of working with Cheesehead TV this upcoming draft cycle, which is going to start up at the end of this month. So if you are a Packer fan, or if you're not, and you just care about draft content for all of the NFL teams out there, make sure you check me out on Cheesehead TV and the draft content that they are putting out.
Owen.
Yep. So you can find me most frequently here on the Draft Professor. I also co-stream it over on the Weekly Huddle YouTube channel, where you can find some of my other exclusive content, including yours truly, Newt Weston, who did his top 10 positional rankings over the summer over there on Weekly Huddle. I'm definitely going to be looking to pump out some more of that content. I've hit a point where now I'm in my break between my 2 semesters, and I can definitely pump out some more stuff. I just posted a video recently about covering the Buffalo Bills. Shocker, I know, my favorite team, and how they invest their capital, whether it's free agency dollars or draft picks, and how it differs between their offense and defense, setting floors or ceilings based on what you invest there, and kind of look at their situation. I'm taking kind of requests as to what teams to cover next. I know I got a request for the Jets. Maybe I'll cover the Packers eventually in the future, where looking at their teams and seeing, like, based on who they currently have, whether it's age or decline or just a lack of talent on one side of the ball or the other, how you should be investing your specific capital that you have. So that's something I'm really interested in getting into, more team building stuff. But the draft stuff here, you're going to catch me 2 nights a week, Tuesday nights, which I think we're turning it more into like a Bills draft night with Jerry Ostrowski and Randall and some of the other Bills draft professors. And it's, of course, Wednesday nights here with Newt, where we're going to be covering linebackers going forward, where I'm going to be having a date with Chris Stapleton's Whiskey here for another couple hours if we get after this, because I've been waiting to dive in this linebacker class. I'm going to be up until it's 10:30 my time now. I'm about to go downstairs and crank out some stuff until like 1, 2 a.m.
Are you going to be putting that on your Kick? Are you going to be like watching it live?
I might be able to. I have to figure out some of the stuff with the film.
I'll be awake. Text me.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Watch Red Murdoch.
You know I will.
Yeah.
Him and Deion Crawford, even though I think Crawford might be going back. UB, a bunch of transfers right now. Like Nick McMillan and Victor Snow both hit the transfer portal, which is insane to me. They lost all their best receivers.
Well, I want to give a specific shout out to Newt and Owen. They have been podcasting with Draft Professor longer than anybody else on the channel, right? So the fact that you guys are still podcasting with each other, man, I love coming to Wednesday nights. As Owen said, Draft Professor is about to start 2 team draft podcasts. So we're going to do a Buffalo Bills podcast on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. So that's Randall Slifer, Owen, myself, Jerry Ostrowski, and we will bring other content creators in. While we're not sure exactly how it's going to go, Owen, Jerry, and I had a great conversation yesterday about like breaking down the offensive line on the roster. Which players do you resign? Are there free agents that we would look at to bring in? And then what players did Owen and Jerry evaluate during their scouting reports that they like? And then we're going to do the same thing with wide receivers the week after. So we at least have the next 2 planned. We're also starting in January a Philadelphia Eagles draft podcast. So we have 3 draft professors that are Eagles fans, and they can all podcast on Thursdays. So the only team that has more fans is the Packers, right? Because there's actually more Packers draft professors than Bills. The problem is nobody can podcast at the same time. There's just too many restrictions.
Jack's across the pond, and Bill
exactly
lives a weird life.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, not Bill. Brian lives a weird life.
Yeah. But I have visions of starting some of these because ultimately my goal is to engage more content creators on the channel. So Ryan Sparks has podcasted with us before. We could probably put together a Bengals podcast for a day, right? Or something like that. So were you laughing at Ryan's comment about the government? Okay.
I was laughing at Newt laughing.
Kind of thing. But I want to say thank you to everybody that's here. We will be podcasting the next 2 Wednesdays. It'll be me doing some mock drafts in the morning. So I hope that you have a great Christmas Eve, a great New Year's Eve. Owen and Newt will be back. I believe it's going to be Wednesday, January 6th, whatever that Wednesday is.
Is that what we're doing, linebackers? I can't remember.
We decided. I just don't have the.
It's written down somewhere. January 6th. That sounds like linebackers to me.
Yep. But so we'll be back, even if you miss us for 2 or 3 weeks. You can just watch us on rerun. For Newt, Owen, myself, the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your evening, and we will see you on a podcast again tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
See you.